Today's show is brought to you by Audible, and right now you can get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/joined-up. There's over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle or MP3 player. Thanks for tuning in to the Joined Up Writing Podcast, a weekly show featuring interviews with fantastic authors sharing their personal stories on how and why they write. There's hints and tips for aspiring writers and great book reviews from top bloggers. Follow us on Twitter @JU Podcast. Right, cue the cheesy theme tune.
Put down your pen and stop your typing. Grab yourself a drink, 'cause it's Joined Up Writing. Epilogue.
Yes, it's the Epilogue, our bonus in-between episodes, quick listens containing an extra question or topic not covered in our main interview. And this week it's Matt Wesolowski returning to talk about podcasts. If you missed it, you can find his full interview where we talked about his writing technique, background and more over at joinedupwriting.co.uk, or even better, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify or wherever else you get your podcasts for a new episode to be automatically downloaded every single week. We've got a huge archive of interviews as well, 2-minute tips, epilogues and writing chats for you to enjoy, and it's all completely free. And if you still can't wrap your head around the whole podcast thing and podcast apps, then at the very least, why not just subscribe to the blog with the subscribe button over at joinedupwriting.co.uk, and that way you'll get a little email every Tuesday to let you know that the new episode is available to listen to. However, after this little bonus chat with Matt Wesolowski, you're definitely going to be inspired to listen to more podcasts, as we both share why we love this medium so much, as well as our own show recommendations for future listens, so enjoy. Okay, Matt, thanks a lot for hanging around for the epilogue, our little bonus quick listens that we do in between our main interviews. And as we talked in the main interview, obviously you're highly inspired by podcasts. You've got a couple of books out at the moment that are in that format, a book format of podcasts. So you alluded to it, you like some true crime podcasts and different things. Why don't you give us a bit of a flavour of the kinds of podcasts you tend to listen to? Have you got any recommendations for us?
Yeah, I'm really picky with podcasts. I really like the true crime ones where it's just an explanation of the case, where it doesn't go too much into anything else but the case and goes into it deep. So there's a really good one called Case File, which is getting a lot of adulation now online, and rightly so. It's a one-man narrated podcast, and it's about an hour long, and talking a lot about, it's an Australian one, talking a lot of Aussie crime, and occasionally some larger crimes. Well, he did an episode on Jonestown and that sort of thing. Oh, right. But interestingly enough, the host of the podcast remains completely anonymous.
A bit like Scott King.
Exactly like Scott King. And I didn't know this until after 6 Stories had been written and everything. And the big thing with Scott King in 6 Stories was that he wanted to be anonymous and just tell the story. And I read an interview with the guy who does Case File, and he says exactly the same thing. And it was so odd and serendipitous. And it was pretty cool. But yeah, that's a really good one. And it's, again, just blunt. He's got a really sort of soothing voice. There's no bells and whistles on it. He just tells the story. And I really like that one. And I'm interested in Aussie crime, Australian crime. I don't know what it is about Australian crime.
I was just going to say, what is that? Where did that come from? Is there a particular reason?
There's some sort of brutality to it. There's a deeper brutality
out
to
in
it,
the wilderness.
I feel. Yeah, if you look at some of the murders out there, they're absolutely horrific. I read a book called, I think it's called Suffer the Little Children, about this guy called Derek Percy, who is dead now, and he died quite recently in prison. Just one of the most horrific child murderers I've ever heard of, and I've never heard of him anywhere. I can't even remember where I heard about him now, but read this book about him, and it's like you've got your murderers in England and America that are bad, and then the ones in Australia, it's like the wildlife in Australia. Do you know what I mean?
Everything's more dangerous.
Yeah, you get a spider here, and it's like the size of your hand. There, it's the size of your face and can kill you by looking at you. And I feel a little bit that way about Australian crime. And there's there's another one called Felon, which is
these
similar.
are all good. I've not heard of any of these, so that's good. Felon.
Yeah, Felon. It hasn't had an episode for a while, but
is that another Australian one?
Yeah. And it's a guy with a cool voice who just tells the story of the crime. And I don't know what it is about Felon, but again, it's dark, it's brutal. It's like when I look for a documentary, I want to find the darkest, the most brutal, and the most. And it's like that with podcasts. So those two are really good.
It's funny now I come to think of it. It's only now talking to you. I don't think I've ever listened to an Australian podcast, like an actual one that's actually branded up as an Australian thing. I'm trying to think.
Really?
I don't think I've come across any. Yeah, obviously they're out there, but I mean, I don't think I've stumbled into one. There is one like a sciencey one that's got. I'm sure it's got an Australian host, but I think it's an American podcast.
Okay.
But yeah, that's interesting. So Felon and Case File. Yeah. Any other ones that spring to mind?
Yeah, there's a good UK one, and I'm just trying to remember the title. They Walk Among Us. That's a good one.
They Walk Among Us.
Yeah, that's a good. It's all UK crime, and again, I really think that the host of these podcasts play a huge role in why I like them. When someone's got a good voice and is able to a good voice. That's such a rubbish way of putting it.
I know. It's absolutely spot on. Because likewise, I've had somewhere on paper, I read the thing about it and I might read a review and I think, oh, that sounds brilliant. That sounds so up my street. And it might be well written, it might be well produced, but the person's voice just does not get me at all.
Yeah, or they might be fine. The way they do it, and it's like you say, well produced. Their voice might be fine, but it just doesn't hook you. And I've had a few of those, and I don't want to mention them by name because I think that's not very nice. But I've had a few podcasts where I've read the thing and gone, that's brilliant, that's perfect for me. And I've listened to the first 2 episodes and just I don't know what it is. It just hasn't got me. It just hasn't grabbed me. But those 3 are good in terms of true crime.
Have you checked out Stranglers? Or is it just called Strangler?
Oh, no. No, I think I've heard of that one.
It's really good. It's good. It is basically about the Boston Strangler, but cool. I wasn't that au fait with that case. I knew a little bit about it. And it's one of those things, it's kind of a lot more. You think, well, how can they get I think there's 12 episodes or something ridiculous. Okay. How can they get that out of it? But it's kind of one of those things, it's a lot more complicated than you realise.
That sounds good.
Yeah, so I recommend that.
All right, Stranglers. Yeah, I'm sure I've heard that advertised in another podcast. That sounds a bit like Atlanta Monster. That's a new one.
Oh, that sounds good.
But that sounds very like the same thing. It's looking at one case. I binged that in a day, I think. It's great.
Brilliant. Well, the thing I like about Stranglers is you're talking about found footage and kind of the way that you kind of put your books together, is that they've actually, there is a part of that where they've actually got recordings of one of the actual guys, the suspects or whatever you want to call them, interviewed in prison. They're not great quality, and some of it they have to play little bits of it, but they've got actors to read the transcripts on those little bits. It works really, really well. And it's got the dramatic music, and they've got little bits of sound effects and different bits and pieces in there. There's something. I love all those ones. I think I mentioned to you before about Crime Town is another good one to try.
Okay, I've got that on my list.
Yeah, again, it depends what kind of crime thing. It might not be dark enough for you, but that's kind of more like Goodfellas for your ears. But they're all real people, and it's all interviews. Great soundtrack, and it's full of humour. I don't know how into Goodfellas and Scorsese films and stuff like that you are, but obviously with a lot of those things, even when the most heinous things are happening, there's usually some kind of joke or some kind of one-liner in there. It's a bit like that. Okay,
yeah. I mean that's good. Have you heard Last Podcast on the Left? That's a huge one.
No, what's that about?
It's 3 American guys, and they're comedians and talking about, they cover like some of the biggest serial killers. So you've got your Bundy, your Ed Gein, your Jeffrey Dahmer.
Brilliant.
It's usually 4-part episodes, but they do it in a comedy sort of way.
That sounds great.
I'm not selling it particularly well here.
It is to me. That sounds great. No, it does. It sounds great.
It's phenomenal. I love it. Weirdly, that's what I listen to when I'm in the gym. That podcast, for some reason, that works when I'm working out.
Keeps you going.
So weird, but that one really works for working out or any sort of exercise. But it's wonderful because they put across the facts and they tell the story, but they're also hilarious about it.
Yeah.
Without being disrespectful or disingenuous, it's always kind of, if they're being making comedy of it, it's making comedy against the bad guy, as it were.
I know what you're saying. Yeah,
but it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And they've covered, like, they've done Jonestown as well. They do conspiracy. They also do a bit of paranormal stuff. They've done Satanism and demons and witchcraft, and it's great.
Oh, I'll check that out. So presumably you've done things like S-Town and stuff like that. How did you?
I loved S-Town.
Yeah, I did.
Loved S-Town.
That went seriously dark. I mean, I couldn't really believe how dark that went.
That was wonderful. That was I loved what a curveball it was, because you thought it was just going to be about this murder, and then it turned into something completely different. And that's what was so good about it. That was a huge influence. When I sometimes think when I'm writing, I want to be able to write as good as that was. And of course, it wasn't written. Unless it was. Unless it was. Well, yeah, but in a way it was. I mean, that is the thing with those things. I mean, yeah, it's based on, it's all factual stuff in its interview. But like I said to you before, someone's, there's an incredible amount of time and effort and skill that's gone into crafting that narrative. Absolutely.
To wait, that they've pulled that out of it, and they've put this through line that goes through it and kind of made things link up, and the way they, again, without giving spoilers away, but the way that they link it back to, what he does and the fact that he makes clocks and how that's all linked in, and the way that he starts stuff. It could be a great novel. It is like a novel, really. It is.
It really is. It's so literary. And what a story. And like you say, it is just a bunch of facts, but woven together.
Just the sheer amount of time. I mean,
yes.
I think when is it start in 2011, 2012 or something like that? Something like that. I think when the original story started, when he first starts getting the emails or phone calls or whatever it is, and to stick with it for that amount of time and tell this such a big story over such a long period of time, I can only, I just humbled by the amount of time and effort that went into it. But, these things do have a huge, they have pretty big budgets in comparison to a lot of other things, but there's a hell of a lot of people working on them, but they're just really kind of impressive journalistic storytelling.
Absolutely. And there's another good one, actually, which did a podcast about S-Town and the people in S-Town. Real Crime Profile. Have you heard that?
No.
It's like an analytical podcast with an ex-FBI behavior analyst, and a woman who used to work in Scotland Yard. She heads a lot of like domestic violence investigations and that sort of thing, and they look at things and pick them apart. So they did a really interesting episode about S-Town and the people involved in S-Town, and used their expertise to discuss it. They also did one about the recent shooting in America, and it's fascinating. That's a really good one if you're into behavioral analysis.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Well, there's loads of recommendations there, so thanks very much for that. And as I mentioned in the main interview, obviously the reason we were talking about podcasts in the first place is because Matt has written these excellent books that kind of take that format and, well, you've turned them into books, and into novels, and it works really, really well. So there's 6 stories in this Hydra, and there's at least one more to follow.
Yes, if I get it finished.
I've got a feeling we'll be talking in like a few years, and you'll be on like book 10, and you go, no, really, this is the last one that I do.
It's had its day.
Scott King has retired. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll try and kill him, and he'll just keep coming back.
There'll always be the recordings. Yeah, he comes back from the grave.
There you go. Then the horror novel. Then I'll make it horror.
There you go. That's when it kicks in. The radio kicks in. Okay, well, brilliant. Well, it's been really good fun talking to you, Matt, and good luck with everything, and I look forward to seeing what you do next.
Thank you very much, and good luck with the rest of your podcast. It's I look forward to hearing future episodes of it. It's great.
There you go, that was Matt Wesolowski, and you should definitely check out his latest book, Hydra. And a quick reminder of some of those shows that we talked about. There was Last Podcast on the Left, Felon, Case File, They Walk Among Us, Crime Town, Atlanta Monster, and S-Town. And you can find out more about Matt and his work over at Arenda Books. And if you haven't done so yet, make sure you listen to his full interview from episode 74. Next week, I've got a double header with me chatting to both Nathan O'Hagan and M.W. Leeming about small presses, and in particular their very own Obliterati press. But that's it for this week, so thanks for listening. I'm Wayne Kelly, happy reading and writing, and I'll see you next time.
Joined up